When working with pivot tables, it's important to consider some of the pivot table options. I've just clicked in this pivot table, and from the ribbon I'm going to choose the Pivot Table Tools Options tab, and to the far left in the pivot table group I'm going to click this Options button. Some people like to give a pivot table a name that describes what the pivot table is all about. I'm going to name my pivot table Staff by Department, Year and Region. Besides naming my pivot table, there are other options such as what do you want to display in empty cells. I have quite a few empty cells in this pivot table, so I might like to display a 0. I'll click on this option here and type 0. When I click OK, I'm now seeing 0 in the empty cells. The other thing to acknowledge is on the far left of my Pivot Table Tools Options tab in the ribbon is the name of the pivot table is now reflected. If I return to the Options button, I can take the 0 out and click OK. If I return to the Options button, I would definitely make sure that these two options were ticked. And that is when I update or refresh the pivot table, that Excel will best fit or auto-fit the column widths. And should I apply any formatting to my pivot table, I want that formatting to be preserved if the pivot table is updated or refreshed. Under Totals and Filters, I would definitely make sure these two were ticked as well. I do want to see grand totals for rows, and I do want to see grand totals at the foot of each column. Under Display, some people are still preferring the classic pivot table layout look from earlier versions of Excel. If you wish to see the classic pivot table layout, you can tick this option, and that'll resemble Excel 2003. When it comes to printing, I would repeat the row labels on each printed page. It just makes it easier when you're viewing a printout. Under Data, I would consider ticking this option, and that is whenever the file is open that the pivot table is automatically refreshed so that you can be confident that the data in the pivot table is pretty much up to date. And those are the sorts of options you should consider when working with pivot tables. So I'll go OK.